Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday morning, last morning of Identiverse. Most people have to catch planes and whatnot. But as I was mentioning, I mean, it's a hearty bunch, but the excitement and the vision and the talent and the commitment of the identity community is just so exciting to me. And this has been a tremendous week. We appreciate you joining us today for getting it right, the business case for knowing your customers. My name is Lynette Hushen. I'm the market research manager. I'm not going to hit my mic with my hand. My name is Lynette Hushen. I'm the market research manager for Ping Identity. So I work in our Center of Excellence, where we bring the outside perspective into the strategy, the products, and everything that we deliver at Ping to ensure that we get it right for our customers. And my background is in market research and customer experience. So I've been in that arena largely with B2B for roughly 20 years. I've been in identity for 1 year, and this is my first Identiverse. So I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you very much for sharing your morning with us.
And by way of introductions, my name is Vikas Mundada. I'm head of value consulting at Ping Identity. And really when people think of value consulting, they think of financial metrics like ROI and total cost of ownership and any way that we can talk about payback periods and things like that. And while that's all a part of value consulting, part of it's also how do we talk about the intersection of the projects that we're working on, back to something that if you listen to Claire speaking during the Chief Identity Officer presentation, how do we tie back our projects to the intersection of business priorities and risk? And so that's a lot of what my team does. You'll hear a little bit of that as we go through today too.
Okay, is this working? Okay, so I know we've got a smaller group here today, but throughout the week I've talked to a lot of different people, and what I've realized is that so many of us are coming at this identity thing from a different vantage point. Our context is different. So you might be working in an enterprise setting. You might be working for an identity firm, right? And if you're working for an enterprise, your industry and your customer journey is maybe going to look different than another industry and another customer journey. So maybe where we're fundamentally looking at some of the same components of identity, we're coming at it from a different space. We know that companies are investing a lot of money in customer experience. They're investing in understanding it, measuring it, optimizing it, and understanding that the customer experience of today is very different than the customer experience of yesterday and how critical it is. Thinking about customer experience, identity access management is often referred to, or since I've been in this industry now for a whole year, what I've seen is it's often referred to as sort of a hurdle that we have to overcome, right? It's a potential impediment to the customer experience, and we have to get over it because it's a requirement, right? We have to make sure that we're complying with regulations, that we're avoiding risk. What we want to talk about today is how it can actually be an enhancement to the customer experience, how it can really, literally make that customer experience a better one, and one that's going to lead to increased revenue and ROI, the magic word, right? So we're going to really focus on three things today. Number one, on an outcomes-focused strategy starting point. If you were in the session before this, that was actually one of the items that was brought up then as well, is begin with the end in mind, have a goal-oriented strategy for not only for your identity practice, but for obviously everything that you're doing in business. We're going to talk about some compelling business benefits to customer IAM. And then finally, we're going to share some use case examples of SIAM actually enabling business return.
Now, customers is basically the start of SIAM, right? That's what the C stands for. And it's all about understanding how do they interact and how do they want to interact with our brands, with the business that we're in, to get what they need, right? It's not just about us pushing what we're trying to sell. It's about them getting what they need. And then ultimately, what's that intersection point look like between what we have and what they want? This is the puzzle that we're all playing in. Now, each of us probably has a relationship with the financial institution. Who doesn't? Show of hands, who doesn't have a relationship? Oh, at least we got one who doesn't have a relationship. Now, if you think about what your experience is, your experience of what good customer experience is predicated on your beliefs of what good is and what good's not. Right? I had a fun conversation with one of my best friends the other day, and he said, well, a good customer experience for me is significantly different than what it is for my mom. And he wasn't trying to be demographic that way. It was just her experience is she wants someone to talk with. His experience is, I'd rather not talk to anybody. And so, as it comes to his financial relationship. Now, the journey that you see here, if you can align the projects that we're doing in SIAM back to any of these journeys that are up here at the top, that's how we start having a conversation with the executives. Our SIAM project to improve help desk costs, we're seeing fall apart in this particular part of the journey. Okay, well, what are we doing to fix that problem? We don't have to get into the technology specifically to do that. Not to mention, if you think about Andre's conversation, the keynote on Tuesday, there's this onslaught of generative AI right now that's coming upon us, right? When we used to be able to use things like voice authentication, it's a little scarier now. He happened to tell us at the office, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago, that he had used generative AI to actually fool his bank where he said nothing to get into his accounts. I'll tell you, that's scary. We're in a scary business right now, so we all have really hard work ahead of us. Now, understanding your customers is a big part, but what's next? You've got to understand how they want to interact with your brand, because that's what customer journeys are. What's next? Well, align your project to the customer journey. And we can more clearly understand what the impacts and the expected outcomes are once we do that. What are the key metrics in that part of the journey that you want to anchor on? Many of us flew here in the past few days. Many of us are flying out. I hear not everybody's flying out today. Who's flying out today? Okay, most of us are flying out today, but I know people are staying over the next few days, hopefully with more than what you left with. Now,
Sure.
Hey, pick your poison, I guess.
Calories.
or calories. Now consider how your identity follows this journey. This feels like something that makes sense to us, right? When we're traveling, you want to get inspired either by way of your own inspiration, or in my case lately, where my kids tell me, hey, it's time to go to the beach. It's been too cold in Colorado. So I totally get that. Tying back to any one or even multiple parts of this journey helps us understand and start providing that profound impact back to the organization. Because now we're talking in the lens of what's good for the business. Now, a fellow attendee, I happened to run into this gentleman on Tuesday, and he said he almost missed the keynote. And part of the reason he almost missed the keynote was because of bad weather, but also the airline didn't understand why he needed to be here at a specific time. And so even though he tried to leave on Monday night, he still didn't get here until like half an hour before the keynote on Tuesday. That's a pretty rough customer journey, especially when they told him he wasn't going to get here until Tuesday night. And so he had to work through those dynamics. Now, understanding the customer journey, and most of us have at least a little bit of fifth grade level math, whether you've practiced it or not, helps you put together, even as a simple means, what's the current cost of the business? So setting a baseline, what's it cost today? What's the impact to the organization, whether it be cost or revenue? And then we can also project out, what's the estimated benefit to the company, right? All of that can be done without meeting with vendors, hopefully working internally, talking with your peers across the industry, across the organization, frankly, your peers here in the room, to make sure you're doing a little bit more to understand what's the impact by aligning to a journey. Now, that's all great. If we're working directly with consumers, feels like it's a little bit easier, right? Who works directly with consumers? Your brands work directly with consumers. Lots of hands. Who works mostly B2B? That you feel like your end consumer is B2B? A lot of people. B2B is, in fact, twice as large as business to consumer. If you look at economic value, the economic value chain, that's huge. Who thinks B2B doesn't always go B to B to C? That there's not a play all the way back to an end consumer? Anybody's business? Not a hand. So being able to understand what that relationship of your brand all the way to that end consumer can even help you in your conversations when you're talking to your buying community, so that B2B community. So if you think about that and you start talking about, well, sure, we do this for you, but this enables you to do this for your consumer. You've now extended what your value proposition is for those customers. And so when you start thinking about your business case isn't just predicated on what you're doing for that one person that you're selling to. It's predicated on the hundreds that they're probably selling to. So be thinking about that as you're building out your business case. There's that first level, and then there's the second level. And frankly, on the resale market, there may even be a tertiary. So while B2B doesn't appear to fit very naturally in the other two journeys, I'll show you here where it fits a little bit more appropriately across other journeys. Now, this is just another sample, right? This is patient care. And just in like patient care, there is a direct from patient to provider journey, right? If you think about your primary care, you think about your specialists, they're all values across that very first line of the relationship owner. They tend to be the first person that's working with you as a patient. But then there's a whole ecosystem involved in this journey. And if you think just going down the board, the relationship owner, that's that direct relationship, so the B2C side of things. Then you also have those technological enablers. There are multiple technological enablers across any of the other journeys that you saw as well. We just want to leave it here for the punchline. But they fit in all of these journeys in every industry. And I'd be interested to know if you have customer journeys. This is something we can talk about offline, but do you have customer journeys built internally that you're already thinking about? And I'll tell you, a lot of customers that I work with, especially since we spend a lot of time talking in technology or to technologists, they're not thinking about what the customer journey is. Some of that's talking with your marketing department and say, hey, what's our journey? Or if you as an organization has one built out, aligning back to what that looks like. And then finally here, partners and influencers. And I don't mean influencers from the Gen Zs and Snapchat and TikTok. I don't mean influencers from that perspective. I mostly mean standards bodies, government agencies. There was a presentation that was happening earlier this morning that said there's a huge influence, especially in banking, where governments have a big hand in what that form looks like and what the standards are. So making sure we understand that those are influencers. And if you work for a government agency, you're influencing everything going up. And so what's that impact look like? And have we thought through what the end consumer will feel based on what standards we apply? Now, all of these journey mappings fall back to answering those questions I mentioned at the top. How do they interact with us to get what they need? And where do we intersect with that project?
So we saw 3 examples of customer journeys, and I think it was just a very quick glimpse into the complexity that is involved in those journeys and all the different touch points and all of the different users intersecting with those touch points. You know, the digital age, everybody talks about the digital age. It's been here for a long time. It continues to pick up speed, right? And it continues to be more and more complex. So it's never changing. It just really impacts the way we do everything in our lives. Gosh, I mean, did anybody have the key to your room that was on your phone? Did everybody have that? What an amazing idea, right? I mean, it's authorization, right? It's verifying that you're the only person that can get into your room and get in your elevator. Did anybody else ever get on the elevator and not have your phone ready to go when you had to pick your floor and maybe wrote a couple of extra floors? Yeah, I did that. But you know what I realized when I got to my room that is, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 miles from this room, that I've had occasions in Vegas where I had a key card and made it all the way to my room, and it didn't work anymore because my phone had deactivated. So then I had to, I was really getting my rings closed on my watch. So that customer experience was actually this new one. Maybe I had to make an adjustment, but it turned out to be amazing. And you know what? Now I'm a pro. Now I can just, get on the elevator, get on the phone, know what has to happen. But it's just an example of how technology continues to change everything that we do. And customers and users have their phones in their hand every single second. They're being influenced by influencers, by everything that they look at on their phones constantly. And we have to understand what their motivations are now more than ever. There's an old article, not too old, 2 years old maybe, in Forbes that really talked about where in the past, and I'm old enough to remember this past, lower prices and higher quality were really the cornerstones of marketing and sales. But now more than ever, enterprises really need to know what motivates their customer. And knowing and understanding your customers obviously brings incredible value to your business, right? You can identify customer needs, preferences, pain points, right? You can surprise, you can delight them with your offerings. You can offer them an amazing customer experience that's gonna make them wanna come back. I mean, customer experience, I mean, how many of us have, I've done it. I've said, all right, I'm gonna buy directly from this brand. And then I go on there and then I have to register and I have all these issues. And I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to order it from Amazon because, right, I can click through and I can get it done. Just an example of the critical nature of the customer experience. So that customer experience drives loyalty then, right? So you've got customers who keep coming back and maybe not just coming back, but expanding, you know, your share of their wallet, you know, and maybe they're then making recommendations to other people. So now your customer base is growing, and maybe if you're tracking behaviors and what they're doing, it even offers up new revenue streams, right? So you're growing and you're growing exponentially. And it's enabling you to build targeted marketing campaigns that are gonna speak to people and really portray your brand as a brand for someone like me. So throughout that customer life cycle, every single touch point is an opportunity to let your customers know that you understand what motivates them, right? That these are all opportunities to have interactions and to build it. It means you've got to get it right through every point of the life cycle. Hitting those triggers in marketing, offerings that are going to motivate satisfaction, loyalty, growth, market share, advocacy, and ultimately get the most out of that customer lifetime value. And that means expanding out to new customers. You know, we live in an age where customers are sharing their experiences freely and broadly. When I started out in market research, you couldn't get feedback. I mean, you really had to try to cultivate that. Now, you've got to curate it. You've got to determine what's real and what isn't real. And as Vikas said, and everyone's talked about this week, as we really embark on this age of AI, more than ever, we got to do everything that we can to verify the validity of that information. And identity access management can help enterprises gain a deeper understanding of their customers by providing a comprehensive view of their identities, their behaviors, their usage patterns across different services, channels, and applications. This can help enterprises make informed decisions about their customer engagement strategies, their marketing campaigns, and their product offerings. It's also the key to safely linking customers to the stops along their journey, including interactions, preferences, reviews, really getting that intelligence that we need in order to make sure that we're just really doing business the best way possible. Identity access management is key to knowing your customers, and it's critical to getting it right. Not only does it empower that customer lifetime value that we were just talking about, it helps to protect customer privacy and trust by verifying the identity of customers and authorizing transactions. And I mean, authorization, it just kept speaking to me today. This is so amazing. You know, it's in ways that maybe we don't even realize, you know, on the customer use case. And then by evaluating behavior to flag bad actors, protect against fraud, counterfeiting, and impersonation. As AI continues to become a bigger part of our lives, identity professionals are on the front lines of protecting those values and ensuring SIAM helps enterprises achieve business priorities. So getting there safely. We recently completed several studies since I've been with the organization. And one of them was talking about market problems and priorities. And we really had 4 quadrants here that we're looking at. They start out anywhere from tangible and tactical, really specific, to those that are just maybe more strategic and complex. But just kind of 4 major areas of focus for businesses in terms of productivity, revenue growth, business risk avoidance, and cost savings. How can SIAM help in those areas? And I mean, there's a lot of ways, right? But some examples are, you know, reducing costs of manual processes like password resets and user provisioning and deprovisioning, as well as compliance and audit activities, and you know, reducing the risk of security breaches and data via strong access controls, identity verification, and monitoring. And then that also helps save costs, you know, of potential legal liability. It enables employees to focus on their core work, so they're not spending time dealing with, hiccups related to identity. And then ultimately, that customer experience is going to help grow revenue. So from tangible to less tangible, and from tactical to strategic, SIAM can really empower business success. And this was kind of actually a subject in the earlier, the session that was just before this, is just getting that conversation expanded. This is data from a study that we actually just completed, and Ping is going to be publishing a report on the state of identity. Should be coming out by the end of June. And you've seen actually some of the data from that report has kind of been integrated into some of our presentations this week. But one of the things that we asked, we talked to about 700 identity decision makers, is who do you collaborate with internally to make identity access decisions? And what we see is maybe not a huge shock, but primarily at the bottom we see it's IT, executives and security, engineering, development, compliance, and risk. And then there are conversations happening with customer success, but those digital marketing, product teams, business executives, those are the folks that are focusing on the enterprise end business. How about expanding that conversation and making identity access management part of that conversation? How does it contribute to business wins? And having those across the aisle conversations, ensuring that it's being built with the end in mind, to ensure that your processes are enhancing your business and they're aligned with those customer journeys that are part of your marketing and product efforts. So all that to say that SIAM can really measurably contribute to achieving business objectives and maximizing customer lifetime value. And those, I'm not going to read them, but essentially, making processes easier, clean, seamless, personalized, self-service, that's going to help with your productivity, save you money, and then wrapping it all up in a big hug of, data privacy and security at every interaction point.
So guys, I know we're tight on time, so I'm going to run through the next few slides really fast so that we can get to a call to action. Part of the reason we want to put this up here is we've talked a bit about mapping back to a customer journey. How do you talk to executives? How do we start expanding that conversation? There's a theory out there of how many of you guys vision board? A lot of vision boarders out here? One, okay, at least we have one, that's good. The idea of a vision board is to put out there maybe a little bit of positive light, but really to set a goal of what we want to accomplish. So if we start with the end in mind, what do we want to accomplish? Start by similarly building a press release for what do you expect customers to think about what you're offering them. And if you can think with that end in mind, it will help get through any of the project implementation issues you have. It'll help distill what the requirements are of what you're trying to achieve. So do start thinking about 3, 6, 9, 12, however long it takes you to implement projects. What's that end state? And if you can get concurrence from the rest of the organization on what that is, you're more likely to achieve your results. Where 87% of IT projects fail is because we don't start with what the end person wants to do. And if you were in the McDonald's conversation, I love that Ebony presented this earlier in the week, they solved a problem. The punchline is it happened to be the wrong problem. And so being able to think about what's the end people need to solve will help with that journey. There will be notes out there, you'll see this, but this is what the press release could look like. Adapt it to your own needs so you can socialize it internally and get candid feedback from stakeholders. Is this the right problem? Is this the end result that we're looking for? And while these slides will be in what you'll get when everything gets produced, this is just an adapted version of what a press release could look like. What are we trying to achieve? Who do we want to impact? And what's the benefit for them, right? Being able to play that message back helps the organization anchor on what we're trying to do. So just jumping ahead to key takeaways.
So essentially what we want you to take away from this is 3 major things. That now more than ever, SIAM needs to align to business priorities. That's the win, right? That's ultimately helping enterprises be successful and take care of customers. Start with the end in mind. What does success look like for business? We saw some examples of that. And customer identity access management, SIAM, helps companies minimize risk. It enhances revenue growth. It increases productivity, and it saves money.
All right, so here's what we really want to leave you with as well. So this week has all been about community. We've all met a lot of people. We've all done a lot of things. We've all had some great conversations. In fact, even at last night's dinner that I was at, this question came up with some of the clients that I was working with. Most of us are identity professionals or executives, and more often than not, we don't work with our fraud counterparts in our organizations. Is that true for most organizations that are in here? Yeah, feels appropriate. Every single customer that I was with last night said this to me. So it just happened to be, it was already in our presentation, happened to be very timely, so it was great. So here's the call to action. Whether you do it now, do it when you get back into the office, there's a QR code. Spend an hour, think about how your organizations, your teams work with your fraud counterparts. And what's that interaction look like? Whether it be, do systems talk? Do the people talk? And share your experiences. Or what I've heard other people say is, maybe I'm not comfortable sharing my experiences, but I'd love to ask for help. There's a form out here that you can go put information in. It's anonymized, but if you want to put your information in there, the community will see this, and maybe somebody will reach out to you and you can get some help. Guys, with that, that's all we got. I'm Vikas Mundada.
Lynette Hushen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.